What if Ash had Solgaleo from the beginning? Now, a lot of people are saying this would be way too overpowered, and honestly I agree. If Ash started with a full-on Solgaleo, he'd probably just destroy every gym leader, and the story wouldn't even be fun. So instead, we're going to give Ash the unevolved form of Solgaleo, Cosmog. It can still teleport and has some really cool abilities, but it's nowhere near strong enough to carry Ash through Kanto. So let's get into it. Everything changes the day Ash arrives at Professor Oak's lab. Instead of receiving Pikachu, Professor Oak tells Ash he recently received a mysterious Pokemon egg from another region. Nobody knows exactly what Pokemon is inside because it has never hatched before. The moment Ash walks over to the egg, it suddenly begins glowing. A few seconds later, the egg hatches. Inside is a tiny Cosmog. Professor Oak is completely shocked because he has never seen this Pokemon before. He has no idea that Cosmog will eventually evolve into one of the strongest legendary Pokemon ever discovered. The strange thing is that Cosmog immediately floats over to Ash. It chooses him. Seeing this, Professor Oak decides to let Ash begin his journey with Cosmog instead of Pikachu. At first, Ash is honestly a little disappointed. Cosmog can't really battle. Most of the time, it just floats around and its only real moves are Splash and Teleport. Sometimes it accidentally teleports Ash into the wrong place, getting both of them into funny situations. But despite that, Ash quickly grows attached to it. As Ash begins traveling through Kanto, he still catches Caterpie, Pidgeotto, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and eventually Charmander, just like in the original timeline. Kanto team Cosmog, Butterfree, Pidgeotto, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, Charizard. Because Cosmog isn't strong enough to battle yet, the rest of Ash's team has to step up much earlier than in the original story. Bulbasaur becomes the team's leader during battles, while Charmander slowly starts proving itself against stronger opponents. Cosmog mostly watches from the sidelines, but it learns something from every battle. Every time Ash or one of his Pokemon gets hurt, Cosmog tries to help. Sometimes it accidentally teleports a Pokemon out of danger, and other times it uses its strange psychic powers to protect Ash for just a split second. Ash starts realizing that even though Cosmog isn't strong, it's definitely special. Eventually, Ash reaches Pewter City for his first gym battle against Brock. Since Cosmog can't battle yet, Ash relies on Bulbasaur and Pidgeotto instead. The battle plays out similarly to the original timeline, with Ash barely earning his first badge through determination and smart strategies rather than overwhelming power. As Ash continues traveling through Kanto, Cosmog slowly starts becoming braver. Instead of hiding behind Ash during dangerous situations, it begins floating beside him, wanting to help however it can. One of the biggest moments comes during the St. Anne incident. When the ship begins sinking, Ash and several of his Pokemon become trapped below deck. Just when it looks like they won't escape, Cosmog instinctively uses Teleport. The attack isn't perfect, but it moves Ash and his Pokemon close enough to an exit that they manage to escape safely. Everyone is amazed. Professor Oak later studies what happened and realizes Cosmog's powers are slowly growing stronger. By the time Ash reaches the Indigo League, Cosmog still isn't much of a battler, but its confidence has grown tremendously. Even though Ash still loses the league because he's an inexperienced trainer, Cosmog has spent an entire region learning alongside him. Orange Islands. After losing the Indigo League, Ash heads to the Orange Islands looking to become a stronger trainer. Since Cosmog still isn't ready for battles, the journey plays out almost exactly like the original timeline. Orange Islands team Cosmog, Charizard, Squirtle, Bulbasaur, Lapras, Snorlax. The biggest difference is that Cosmog has become much more attached to Ash. Instead of floating around aimlessly, it now stays close to him throughout the journey and even tries protecting him whenever Team Rocket causes trouble. The Orange League also stays mostly the same. Charizard is still the star of the finals against Drake and ultimately defeats Dragonite to win Ash his first championship. After the tournament, Professor Oak studies Cosmog again. While he still can't identify the mysterious Pokemon, he notices its body has started changing ever so slightly, almost as if it's preparing for something much bigger. Ash doesn't think much of it. He simply continues his journey toward Johto, excited for the next adventure. After winning the Orange League, Ash heads into Johto with much more confidence. While most of the journey stays the same, Cosmog finally starts becoming a real part of the team instead of just watching from the sidelines. Johto team Cosmog, Bayleaf, Cyndaquil, Totodile, Noctowl, Heracross. As Ash catches new Pokemon throughout Johto, Cosmog forms a close bond with all of them. It especially enjoys training alongside Cyndaquil and Totodile, often floating around the battlefield while watching everyone improve. Even though it still doesn't battle very often, it starts understanding how Pokemon battles work by watching Ash's strategies. One of the biggest changes comes whenever Team Rocket appears. Instead of always relying on Pikachu, Ash now has Cosmog teleport his Pokemon out of dangerous situations or separate Team Rocket from their machines, making it much harder for them to steal Ash's Pokemon. Eventually, Ash reaches the Silver Conference. Most of the league plays out the same as the original timeline because Cosmog still isn't ready for serious battles. The biggest battle is Ash versus Gary. Gary's Blastoise and Ash's Charizard still become the highlight of the match. After an incredible battle, Charizard defeats Blastoise, giving Ash one of his biggest victories. Ash still loses later in the tournament, but just like the original timeline, the loss motivates him to keep getting stronger. After returning home, Professor Oak decides to examine Cosmog again. This time, he notices something completely different. Cosmog isn't just growing anymore, it's getting close to evolving. Professor Oak can't explain when it will happen, but he believes the next stage of Cosmog's journey is finally approaching, and that's where Johto ends. After the Silver Conference, Ash heads to Hoenn ready for another fresh start. Cosmog is still with him, but this region is where everyone finally starts noticing that something is different about it. Hoenn team, Cosmog, Skeptile, Swellow, Corphish, Torkoal, Glalie, most of Ash's Hoenn journey stays the same. Skeptile grows into the ace of the team, while Swellow and Corphish become two of Ash's most reliable battlers. Since Cosmog still isn't much of a fighter, Skeptile carries most of the important battles throughout the region. The biggest change comes near the end of Hoenn. One day, Cosmog suddenly becomes surrounded by a bright light. Ash and his friends watch as it slowly transforms. Cosmog evolves into Cosmoem. Everyone is excited, but they're also confused. Cosmoem doesn't seem any stronger than before. In fact, it barely moves at all. Professor Oak explains that while Cosmoem looks inactive, it's actually storing an unbelievable amount of energy for its final evolution. Ash doesn't mind. He knows Cosmoem is simply growing at its own pace, just like all of his other Pokemon have. By the time the Hoenn League arrives, Cosmoem still isn't ready for battle, so Skeptile remains Ash's ace throughout the tournament. Ash still falls short of winning the Hoenn League, but he leaves the region knowing Cosmoem's biggest moment is getting closer. Then Ash heads toward the battle frontier, where an even greater challenge is waiting. After finishing the battle frontier, Ash heads to Sinnoh. Sinnoh team, Cosmoem, Infernape, Staraptor, Buizel, Gible, Torterra. Most of Sinnoh plays out just like the original timeline. Infernape becomes Ash's ace throughout the region, Paul remains Ash's biggest rival, and Gible joins the team late in the journey. Since Cosmoem still isn't ready to battle, Ash's other Pokemon continue carrying the team. Eventually, Ash defeats Paul and advances to the Sinnoh League finals. Then comes Tobias, the trainer with multiple legendary Pokemon. Tobias opens with Darkrai. Just like in the original timeline, Darkrai defeats several of Ash's Pokemon before Infernape finally manages to weaken it. Ash throws everything he has at Darkrai, but eventually only one Pokemon remains, Cosmoem. The entire stadium is confused. Even Tobias looks surprised. Ash sends out Cosmoem knowing it has never battled before. Darkrai fires Dark Pulse. Just before the attack lands, Cosmoem begins glowing brighter than anyone has ever seen. The entire battlefield shakes. Cosmoem evolves into Solgaleo. Nobody can believe what they're seeing. Professor Oak watches in complete shock. Cynthia immediately realizes Ash is battling with a legendary Pokemon. Tobias smiles, excited to finally face a worthy opponent. The battle changes instantly. Darkrai is still incredibly powerful, but Solgaleo's overwhelming strength proves to be too much. After an incredible battle, Solgaleo defeats Darkrai, becoming the first Pokemon in the tournament to accomplish that feat. Tobias immediately sends out Latios. The stadium erupts. For the first time, two legendary Pokemon are facing each other in the Sinnoh League. The battle is incredibly close, but Solgaleo has just evolved and is still learning how to control its power. Even so, it manages to defeat Latios after an exhausting fight. Tobias is stunned. For the first time in the entire tournament, someone has pushed him to his limit. One by one, Tobias sends out the rest of his legendary Pokemon. While they are all incredibly strong, Solgaleo's raw power combined with Ash's creative battling is enough to overcome them. Against all odds, Ash defeats Tobias. The stadium explodes. Ash goes on to win the Sinnoh League, becoming a regional champion years earlier than in the original timeline. As Ash stands on the winner's podium with the trophy in his hands, Solgaleo stands proudly beside him. This is only the beginning, because now Ash has an experienced Solgaleo heading into Unova. After winning the Sinnoh League, Ash heads to Unova with more confidence than ever before. He's finally accomplished one of his biggest goals by becoming a regional champion, and now he wants to prove it wasn't a fluke. One of the biggest changes is that Ash no longer resets as much as he did in the original timeline. After traveling through 4 regions and winning the Sinnoh League, he battles much more like the experienced trainer he has become. Solgaleo also changes the entire dynamic of the team. Since it's already incredibly powerful, Ash doesn't rely on it for every battle. Instead, he mainly uses Crocodile, Pignite, and the rest of his Unova team so they can continue getting stronger. Solgaleo is only used against opponents that truly push Ash to his limit. As the journey continues, Team Plasma becomes much more interested in Ash. They recognize Solgaleo as a mysterious legendary Pokemon and repeatedly try to capture it for their own plans. This creates several new encounters throughout the region, with Ash and his friends constantly protecting Solgaleo from Team Plasma. Eventually, the Virtus Conference arrives. Unova League team Solgaleo, Crocodile, Pignite, Levani, Snivy, Unfazant. Unlike the original timeline, Ash doesn't lose to Cameron. His experience alone is enough to prevent that upset. Ash comfortably advances through the tournament and reaches the finals. His final opponent proves to be one of the strongest trainers Unova has to offer. The battle goes back and forth as Crocodile, Pignite, and the rest of Ash's team all contribute important victories. Eventually, Ash's opponent reveals their ace Pokemon, forcing Ash to finally call on Solgaleo. The crowd erupts. Most people have only heard rumors about Ash's legendary Pokemon. Now they finally get to see it battle. Despite the opponent putting up an incredible fight, Solgaleo's strength proves too much to overcome. After an intense final battle, Solgaleo secures the last victory and wins Ash the Unova League. Now Ash has accomplished something no one thought possible. Back-to-back league championships. First Sinnoh, now Unova. By the time he leaves for Kalos, trainers around the world no longer see Ash as an underdog. They see him as one of the strongest trainers in the world, and with Solgaleo continuing to grow alongside him, Ash's journey is only getting started. After winning back-to-back league championships in Sinnoh and Unova, Ash heads to Kalos looking for a brand new challenge. Even though he now has Solgaleo, he makes one thing very clear: he doesn't want to rely on a legendary Pokemon to win every battle. Instead, he wants to keep growing as a trainer. Kalos team, Solgaleo, Greninja, Talonflame, Hawlucha, Gudra, Noivern. One of the biggest changes happens the day Ash meets Froakie. Just like in the original timeline, Froakie chooses to join Ash because it wants a trainer that can help it become stronger. But this time, Froakie also notices Solgaleo. From the very beginning, Froakie realizes it's training alongside one of the strongest Pokemon in the world. That completely changes its growth. Every single day, Greninja trains against Solgaleo. At first, it can't even land a hit, but Solgaleo never battles at full strength. Instead, it slowly teaches Greninja how to read opponents, improve its speed, and stay calm under pressure. Because of this, Froakie evolves into Frogadier earlier than in the original timeline. Later, Frogadier evolves into Greninja, after constantly pushing itself to keep up with Solgaleo. Throughout Kalos, Ash rarely uses Solgaleo in gym battles. He wants Greninja, Talonflame, Hawlucha, Gudra, and Noivern to earn their own victories, instead of relying on a legendary Pokemon. As a result, Greninja becomes much stronger than it was in the original anime. By the middle of Kalos, Greninja is already battling at the level it reached near the end of the original series. The bond phenomenon also happens much sooner. Because Greninja has spent months training with Solgaleo, Ash and Greninja develop an even stronger bond. They unlock Ash Greninja earlier and have much more time to master the transformation before the Kalos League. Instead of struggling to control the form, Ash Greninja enters the league already completely mastered. That changes everything. The biggest battle before the finals is Ash versus Sawyer. Unlike the original timeline, Ash Greninja has already mastered the bond phenomenon. Sawyer's Mega Skeptil still puts up an incredible fight, but Greninja's extra months of training prove to be the difference. Ash advances to the finals without nearly as much trouble. Then comes Alen, the battle everyone has been waiting for. Ash's team, Solgaleo, Ash, Greninja, Talonflame, Hawlucha, Gudra, Noivern, Alen's team, Tyranitar, Weevil, Bisharp, Metagross, Unfazant, Mega Charizard X. The battle is just as intense as the original. Talonflame gets an important victory early. Hawlucha and Gudra both help wear down Alen's team. Noivern contributes before eventually falling. Eventually, everything comes down to the final battle. Ash Greninja versus Mega Charizard X. Unlike the original timeline, Ash doesn't need to send out Solgaleo. He wants Greninja to prove how much it has grown. The battle is incredibly close, but this version of Greninja is completely different. It has trained alongside Solgaleo for an entire region. It mastered the bond phenomenon long before the league started. It has battled stronger opponents almost every single day. That extra experience finally pays off. After an incredible final clash, Ash Greninja defeats Mega Charizard X. The stadium erupts. Ash doesn't win because he used a legendary Pokemon. He wins because Solgaleo helped raise Greninja into an even stronger ace than in the original timeline. Ash becomes the Kalos champion, and honestly, that's one of the biggest changes in this timeline. Solgaleo doesn't carry Ash, it makes everyone around it stronger. That's what allows Greninja to finally defeat Alen and and give Ash the league victory he always deserved. After becoming the Kalos champion, Ash decides to visit the Alola region. This time, he isn't chasing another league championship. Instead, he wants to explore a completely new region, train a new team, and finally learn the truth about Solgaleo. Alola team, Solgaleo, Rowlet, Lycanroc, Incineroar, Melmetal, Naganadel throughout the island challenge. Most of the journey plays out similarly to the original timeline. Ash still meets Professor Kukui and the rest of his friends, but one thing is completely different. Everyone immediately recognizes Solgaleo. Professor Kukui is shocked that Ash has been traveling with one of Alola's legendary protectors since Kanto. Even the island guardians begin watching Ash much more closely, because they know Solgaleo has returned to Alola. As the journey continues, Ash learns the history of Cosmog, Cosmoem, Solgaleo, Ultra Space, and the Ultra Beasts. For the first time, everything finally makes sense. The mysterious Pokemon Professor Oak gave him all those years ago wasn't just a rare Pokemon, it was always destined to become one of Alola's guardians. During the Ultra Beast incidents, Solgaleo plays a huge role in protecting the region. Whenever Ultra Beasts appear, Solgaleo helps send them back through Ultra Wormholes, while Ash and his team protect the people of Alola. At the same time, Solgaleo continues training Ash's Alola team. Rowlet becomes much stronger after constantly battling against Solgaleo's speed. Lycanroc improves its battle instincts. Even Naganadel becomes stronger after training beside Solgaleo. As the months pass, Ash begins noticing something. Whenever an Ultra Wormhole opens, Solgaleo always looks toward it, almost like it's being called home. Professor Kukui eventually explains the truth. Solgaleo isn't just a powerful Pokemon, it's one of the guardians responsible for protecting Ultra Space. One day, that responsibility will become more important than traveling with Ash. Ash understands what that means. Even though he never wants to lose his oldest partner, he knows that day is getting closer. By the time Ash prepares to leave Alola, a massive Ultra Wormhole opens above the islands. The island guardians gather. Professor Kukui and everyone else realizes what's happening. Solgaleo slowly walks toward the wormhole before turning back toward Ash. Ash smiles. He tells Solgaleo they've already accomplished everything they dreamed of together. From a tiny Cosmog that couldn't even battle, to winning the Sinnoh League, to winning Unova, to becoming the Kalos champion. Now it's time for Solgaleo to protect the world only it can protect. Ash thanks Solgaleo for staying with him. The two share one final goodbye, then Solgaleo lets out one final roar before disappearing into Ultra Space. Ash watches the wormhole close. For the first time since leaving Pallet Town, his oldest partner is gone. But instead of being sad, Ash smiles, because he knows Solgaleo didn't leave him. It simply returned to where it was always meant to be. Now for the first time in years, Ash begins a journey without a legendary Pokemon by his side. And that journey will lead him to the World Coronation Series. After saying goodbye to Solgaleo in Alola, Ash decides it's finally time to challenge the strongest trainers in the world. Instead of searching for another powerful Pokemon to replace Solgaleo, Ash decides to trust the Pokemon that helped him become the trainer he is today. Journey's team, Ash, Greninja, Lucario, Charizard, Sceptile, Dragonite, Infernape. One of the biggest changes happens at the beginning of Journeys. Ash still catches Dragonite and later catches Riolu, who eventually evolves into Lucario. But instead of training only with Ash, Lucario has something no other Riolu has ever had. Ash Greninja becomes Lucario's main training partner, since Greninja has already mastered one of the strongest transformations Ash has ever seen, teaches him Aura Mastery. Every single day, the two battle each other, and every single day, Lucario gets stronger. By the time the World Coronation Series begins, this is easily the strongest Lucario in the anime. As Ash climbs through the rankings, his veteran team completely changes the tournament. Instead of relying on inexperienced Pokemon, Ash has champions from multiple regions battling beside him. Charizard continues proving why it's one of Ash's greatest Pokemon. Dragonite quickly becomes one of Ash's most reliable new partners, and Ash Greninja becomes the team's undisputed ace. Eventually, Ash reaches the Masters 8. The strongest trainers in the world are finally standing in front of him. Against Steven, Charizard and Sceptile do most of the work before Lucario defeats Mega Metagross, proving how much it has grown under Ash Greninja's guidance. Against Cynthia, Infernape and Dragonite wear down her team before Ash Greninja defeats Garchomp in one of the greatest battles of the tournament. Then comes Leon, the world champion. The battle is everything fans hoped it would be. Both trainers trade knockouts until only two Pokemon remain. Leon still has Gigantamax Charizard, Ash still has Ash Greninja, just like Kalos. This time though, Greninja isn't the inexperienced Pokemon that barely mastered the Bond phenomenon. It has become the strongest Pokemon Ash has ever owned. The battle is incredibly close. Gigantamax Charizard pushes Greninja to its absolute limit, but Greninja refuses to fall. After one final clash, Ash Greninja finally defeats Leon's Charizard. The stadium erupts, Ash becomes world champion. Hope you guys really like this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and sorry I didn't have Ash have Solgaleo at the very end. I was gonna add that, but I felt like this was a better ending, so let me know your guys' opinion down in the comment section, and make sure to click on this video on your screen right now